And the big idea here, of course, is that you possess certain rights, but there are also responsibilities that go along with that, and in particular to our discussion over the internet. Much of this is changing rapidly. Of course, our availability to technology has changed rapidly even since I made this presentation. But there's a few terms that are still relevant, such as intellectual property, copyright, or even revenue. So a few academic terms that you'll see, nonetheless, and erode. What authority does the government have when it comes to your private use of the internet? What rights does the government have in terms of monitoring and surveillance, even when it comes to just hanging out on your phone when you're bored between classes, or even hanging out on your phone on your home Wi-Fi? First off, freedom of speech. When our founding fathers passed the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, guaranteeing our right to freedom of speech, also promising freedom of the press, also guaranteeing that the government was not establishing an official religion, and so many of those other things that are associated with free speech, they had no idea that one day there would be an internet. One day you would have the capacity to communicate simultaneously with people from all over the world. And that presents amazing opportunities, but it also creates a number of challenges. And so the internet has become a battleground for freedom of speech. And so freedom of speech has been a very controversial issue. For example, the internet is a place where you can post any manner of content, anything that you can think of. And with that comes some really sketchy material. Some of it offensive, some of it racist, some of it hateful, some of it pornographic, some of it just downright terrible. But if we protect freedom of speech, that means the bad stuff too. Now, at schools retain the right to use filtering software. So like when you were doing research for your Superman project, a number of sites were blocked because perhaps those sites contained some rather sketchy content. It's not that you intended to find that sketchy content, but if a site has that and the school or the system deems that it is inappropriate for school consumption, then it is blocked. So filtering software is used commonly by schools, but it can also be used by your parents at home. Now, there are some guidelines for censorship of online speech. Remember the Tinker standard. If speech is harmful, and in regards to school, if speech is disruptive, even electronic speech can be either harmful or disruptive to society. The Supreme Court has limited laws in regarding to speech on the internet and has generally fought to keep internet speech free. All you have to do is go to the comments section on your social media and you can read the nasty things that people say to one another that, like it or not, are protected by freedom of speech. One famous case in regards to internet use and freedom of speech is the Reno versus the ACLU. The American Civil Liberties Union is an interest group devoted to promoting and protecting freedom of speech in the United States. They also provide legal defense in civil rights cases, and in this case they challenged before the United States Supreme Court. The court's majority opinion was that speech on the internet should have the highest level of First Amendment protection, similar to that of books and newspapers. So when you publish content online, this morning I shared a silly picture from when I was in college. I was standing on a car. It was kind of, it was just dumb. Well, that post of this old picture of me standing on a car is protected by freedom of speech. You know, I have the right to post that. No one has the right to tell me they can't post that. And in a way, legally, according to the United States Supreme Court, publishing content online is legally the same as publishing a book or a newspaper. Congratulations, you're all journalists. If you've ever written content and posted it online, you have the same legal protections that journalists do, according to Reno v. ACLU. Now, in regards to schools, schools retain the right to limit student speech. And once again, that's where the Tinker Standard comes in. We can regulate your speech if it serves an educational purpose. You know, I appreciate you for not shouting profanities in this room. I view it as unprofessional, so I tend to regulate that type of speech because it's inappropriate for classroom use. Now, the school has a responsibility to communicate those expectations publicly, which we do through our student handbook. And in our student handbook, it details acceptable speech and unacceptable speech. And once again, we retain those rights. But next comes copyright and intellectual property. Now, I'm old enough to remember when the internet first became widely available, and one of the first things we did with the internet once it became widely available was use it to steal information, particularly copyrighted information, music. And collectively, people had to learn, sometimes the hard way, how copyright works. Copyright is the owner's exclusive right to control, to publish, and even to sell original work. If you come up with an idea and you retain copyright privileges of that idea, it's yours. You have the right to make money off of even ideas, and that right is protected through copyright law. Now, this means intellectual property as well. That is, if you write an original work, you could potentially make money off of that. You know, this channel that I'm creating on YouTube just hit 10,000 views. That means I may soon see ad revenue for the content that I'm publishing. Now, any time when I publish content that contains others' work, I have to cite that, give credit for it, and then allow them to make money off of the work that I publish. So that's how copyright works, because if I'm using third-party media like a movie clip, then that belongs to them. And so it's contained in the copyright citation, and they can make money off my work. So if you ever watch one of the US videos that has a movie clip in it, there might be an ad before that video. I'm not collecting that ad revenue. That goes to the copyright holder, whoever made that media clip that I'm using with their permission. Now, this can include songs. Again, it can include these videos. It can include, of course, movies or even books, poetry, art, anything. And even if you've created something and you want to make money off of that something, yes, you can write a book. You can self-publish. You could do one today and self-publish through Amazon, and you can make money off of that, perhaps. And all of that is protected through intellectual property. Now, the copyright owner, let's say Grace has written a book. Now, there's a process to getting it published, but she would become the owner of that material. Meaning she has the exclusive right to control how that information is displayed. Does she want to publish it? Does she want to sell it? Or does she not want to share it? Well, that's completely up to her. That means if she drew an amazing picture, she was just bored in class, so she drew this incredible picture. And it was so good that Becky saw it and was like, Grace, you should get that published. Oh my gosh. And Grace says, no, I just kind of drew that for fun. Well, let's say while Grace wasn't looking, Becky snapped a picture of it, posted it, and it was so good that someone contacts her from a media outlet and says, we'd like to buy that from you. Well, now if Becky sells that to the media without Grace's permission, that's a violation of copyright law. She's stealing intellectual property. Now, the internet makes this very difficult, right? You can Google almost anything and find it. Let's say you didn't want to go to the school's movie night to watch Spider-Man Homecoming. Let's say Leia was like, you know what? I can just Google it at home.
It's a lot harder with movies. With old TV shows, it's easy.
Yeah, and with newer movies it is difficult, but with enough time and enough diligence, she might be able to find a copy of it somewhere. Now, they get taken down all the time. Movies do have to budget to enforce copyright violation. But let's say she finds it. She watches it. She has just stolen intellectual property. But here's the thing. Leia, and it's just unfortunate that the internet has made this possible, but Leia is one of millions of other people that are streaming that illegally. And so how do you prosecute that? The old problem with prohibition was you can't just fill up the jails with half the country. So if everybody's stealing intellectual property, it makes enforcement difficult. It doesn't mean that it's right to do so. It just means that stopping it is very, very difficult. Napster is before your time, but it was developed in 1999. It was an online music streaming and download service. It's kind of like the forward pass in football. So the internet is now widely available. Great. Well, one of the first things that popped up was a way to download music illegally. But since no one had ever seen anything like this, no one really knew what to do about it. Artists complained. Dave Matthews and Metallica both led the charge in complaining and trying to get this stopped, because suddenly, instead of having to buy CDs, instead of actually having to purchase content from the producer, all I have to do now is Google a song, bloop, download, burn to CD, play it in the car. Now, of course, the technology we have is far more sophisticated today, but it still works the same way. If you want illegal content and you're willing to take the risk, it's not likely you'll get caught, so all you have to do is bloop, download. Well, here's the thing. It's so difficult to prosecute because so many people break that law that all the government can really do is go after the providers. As a consumer, it's going to be tough to catch you because there's so many of you. But a provider, well, that's a target that we can go after. It's like the drug war. If you went out and purchased illegal drugs today, the likelihood of your ever being caught is slim. Gotta break it to you. That is, to be honest, that's one of the underlying problems with the drug war. Enforcement has been difficult. However, the providers are the ones in which law enforcement has often expended incredible resources to catch. Because if we can catch the providers, the hope is we can limit the amount of illegal content. And that's where Napster came in. Napster was sued for breaking copyright law and was forced to shut down. But here's where it gets complicated. So Napster was a provider of the world's content. And I remember when it came out. I remember using it. No one even really understood if it was right or wrong, illegal, not. Eventually it was shut down. Well, next came peer-to-peer sharing. How do you control for that? Let's say that Michaela has the newest Justin Bieber album. She's digging it. She's loving some Justin Bieber. Well, let's say that Ritter is just super excited about Trantham's new Justin Bieber album. She says, hey, can I make a copy of that? Well, here's the thing. It's really simple to do. She puts the CD into the computer, drag and drop, boom. She now has the new Bieber album. And so they're both bumping a Bieber. And what are we supposed to do? That didn't even get registered in the school's online activity. She just put it in the PC, didn't even have to be connected to the internet. She downloaded the file to her hard drive, and she's got the new Bieber album. That's called peer-to-peer sharing. How do you catch that? It's really tricky. Well, guess what? There's a number of services that even exist providing that. Like, let's say you want to share it, but you don't have the CD, but you've got it uploaded to a device at home. You can send it through sites like Grokster. They have weird names. They change all the time because it's an illegal activity. Because you're sharing content that a professional created with the hope of making money off of it, but you're sharing it for free. And again, peer-to-peer. Once again, difficult to prosecute. Okay, so what laws do exist in regards to this? The Digital Millennium Copyright Act makes it a crime to bypass computer codes protecting copyright. There is software out there that will let you rip movies onto your hard drive. And that is a crime. Now it's simple. If I want to add a media clip, I go to YouTube, I download it. When I upload it as one of these videos, I give credit. I consent to allow them to put ads on these videos and make revenue off of it, and everybody's happy. Back in the day, I might have been able to rip the DVD onto a file and use Movie Maker to cut the scene that I wanted from the movie and then to upload that manually. It's the same process. And through fair use guidelines, I can do that legally as long as I give credit and as long as if I publish that content online, I allow them to collect ad revenue off of it. Okay, so the next question is, how do you tax online shopping? While we were in D.C., we went to the mall a lot. Some of you guys enjoyed it. Some of you shopped and bought things. I bought nothing. I bought food. I'm kind of an old grump when it comes to coming to the mall. But meanwhile, I did walk around, did look at some things, and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Maybe I'll buy that on Amazon later. Well, how does Amazon shopping work legally? So online shopping is easier than it ever has been, right? It's amazing. I love it. It's super convenient. I have this app on my phone. If I want something, I hit a button and it shows up at my house in 2 days. It's great. I love Amazon Prime. Well, the question is, how do you tax that? Where's that money go? If you go and shop at Mass General Store and you buy something cool, maybe it's a new hat or a shirt, well, that tax revenue is collected on behalf of Henderson County. That helps make our schools great. It helps repair the roads, the potholes that you're dealing with. All that money stays here, not to mention supporting a local business. But if you walk in there and you see the nice thing, and you do, which we all do this, right? You hop on Amazon and you go, oh, it's cheaper there. Walk out of the store, hit the button, it shows up at your house. Well, the problem is that's lost revenue for Henderson County. That's lost revenue for Mass General Store. Saves you money. So that means that while Toys R Us just declared bankruptcy, Amazon is a multinational conglomerate. And the owner of Amazon is one of the wealthiest men in the world. Toys R Us, my happiness as a kid. Amazon, because even though you may be local shop or super ethical person, you're in the minority. Most of us vote with our wallets. Most of us are going to choose the cheaper option because, seriously, We've got bills to pay. So that means revenue, which is the income that the government collects for public use, is going to be lost for Henderson County, because where does it go? Well, it goes to Amazon. How is it collected? Well, recently, even since the publication of this, recently federal laws were passed ruling that you now have to pay the state sales tax from the state in which you purchased it. So let's say that you buy it here. Well, we have a lower sales tax. But guess what? If you go down to South Carolina, then you hit the Amazon button, you pay less. Why? Because South Carolina has lower state taxes. Well, let's say that you drive over to Tennessee and then you hit the Amazon button. Well, they have a higher state tax. So meaning depending on where you live, the state now has the right to collect that revenue even from online commerce. Okay. That means that now states are collecting taxes, because when Amazon first came out, they didn't have to charge any taxes, which was great. If you're a shopper, of course I'm going to buy stuff online because I don't have to pay any tax. Yay! Instead of going to the store and having to pay lots of taxes. Now, since we're at school, let's talk about how the internet works at schools. You know, the internet at school is great. It's the highest speed internet that I have access to. I'm going to go back up my photos real quick because I forgot to do that. Since I do it at home, it shuts down our internet. I do it here at school. It's going to be done by the time I'm finished with this lesson. Yay. But while that's great, I can back up my photos. It also creates a number of problems. And we've got to figure out how to allow you to use this amazing resource that is the internet without causing problems. So the Children's Internet Protection Act requires all schools to follow these guidelines. All schools have to provide filtering software that block dangerous or offensive materials. So if you were to try to watch a movie illegally here at school, it's going to be blocked. If you were to try to do research about the Nazis, well, some of that might be blocked, even though you're trying to do academic research. And that's because our school is required to comply with the Children's Internet Protection Act. Filtering software obviously can monitor traffic. It can also block traffic. And we are required by federal law to keep a record of every website you have ever visited, every email you have ever sent, every little thing that you type on a Google Doc. Occasionally I get printouts of really creepy things that you type to one another, and I have to deal with those as a behavior issue. Even if they're in some comment thread from some private server thing that you're using. I'm like, oh, Alyssa wrote that at school. Okay, gotta go deal with sketchiness. Come on, Alyssa. This is what you wrote. Here's a printout of what you typed at 3:30 p.m. from the school's Wi-Fi about how you're gonna do creepy things. Awesome. Alyssa didn't actually do that, but yeah. Now, your parents want to know what you're up to. Here are the rights they have, and here are the rights you have. Let's say your parent comes and you're like, oh my gosh, Leia's been so much trouble at home. We don't know what she's up to anymore. I want a printout of everything that Leia has done on the internet here at school. Okay, so what rights did the school have? What rights does Leia have? Well, the court ruled that parents can actually look at your activity. That means, okay, as Alan's parent, I want to see everything he's done on the internet since he's been here at school. He's been sketchy at home. I bet you he's sketchy at school too. So, they can see everything he's typed. But the identities of the people he is communicating with are protected. They cannot be revealed.